to be on the other side of the chair.
I know. I am here to talk about money. Well, okay, let me back up a little bit. You and I both talk a lot to our audiences about how to make money, how to increase our value, communicate our value so that we can make more money as health professionals, as dietitians, dietitians to be. So it's a
Mhm.
lot about how to acquire the money, but
Yeah.
we never talk about what we actually do with that money. How do we spend that money? What does money look like in our lives as either dietitians or health professionals in traditional jobs or
Mhm.
in non-traditional jobs as entrepreneurs?
Yep.
So I'll give a little bit of a background. I was talking to you about some conversation about money
Yeah.
and off of offline,
Yeah.
and you went into a full TED talk all about how you spend your money, how you save your money, how
Yeah.
you have to think about money differently as somebody who is a digital nomad. You are living in lots of different countries. You still have a bank account in the United
Oh,
States,
yes.
but like, you know,
Yeah.
anyway, I
Yeah.
thought, holy smokes, what a cool idea to share all of your knowledge that you have acquired, that you've learned, that you are gaining with everybody else in our audiences. So that's what we're here to talk about today. I get to be on the other end of the interview, stick with you to
Yeah.
actually interview you and quiz you. I'm going to share some of my insights as well. And
Yes, because
gigantic,
you are a successful business owner in your own right and all of that. And, you've got kids going in college and that's a whole financial, thing to manage as well. So yeah, I'm excited for both of us also to be sharing our unique perspectives.
we do have unique perspectives as entrepreneurs, thinking about like what we do with our money. So
Yeah.
I'm just going to start off at the beginning and just give a massive disclaimer. We are both dietitians. We are not financial experts. We are not tax professionals. We are none of the above. We are
Yep.
simply having a conversation. So if you're out there listening and thinking like you're going to get some professional advice, that's not what this podcast is. That's
Nope.
not what
We will
this is.
direct you to
This is
professional advice, but we
this
will
is
not. This
just
is not.
yeah, just a
Yeah.
conversation. All right,
Yep.
that you all get to listen to. All right.
Yeah.
I'm going to start from the beginning. Sort of, you have had a nice career as a dietitian, starting off as a student, then working for another company,
Hmm.
then working for yourself, and then now working internationally.
Yeah.
What's your mindset around nutrition? How has it changed
Around money, right?
around
Yeah.
money? Yes.
Yeah. Around nutrition. I'm like, yeah, I mean, nutrition's good.
Around lunch? No,
Yeah.
around money.
Yeah. Um, growing up, our family had like, we were comfortable, but we weren't like, I think we're middle class, but we lived in an affluent town and we were not as affluent as a lot of the kids that I went to school with. And we had the kind of money where it's like you can go to Disney World like maybe every couple years for a little while. And and then like there was a time where my dad lost his job and there were like different things every so often where it was just kind of this feeling of like we have money but we don't have a lot and we do need to be mindful of it. And so I kind of like grew up with this like a little tension around money. Like I don't want to think about it too much. I don't want to think about how little I have. I just want to know that I have enough to feel like safe and secure. And I don't know if I'll ever get enough money to keep up with the Joneses. There was definitely like some resentment there. So like complicated feelings around money from an early age. And I'm sure there's even more if I were to like go to a therapist and lay down on a couch and like really think about it. But um, and then so I went through. I did get help, for my college from my family, and that was really beneficial. I also though didn't necessarily get too in touch with money at that point because I was like, okay, I have, I still had a job and was making money to pay for food and going out and all of that. Definitely overdrew my bank account once. That was like a learning opportunity. Um, but I was fine. And then I got a great job out of my internship and it was well paying. And I did what my mom told me and maxed out my 401k contribution. But then after that, I did not look at my money or think about my money. I didn't really pay attention to how much was coming out in terms of taxes or healthcare or health insurance. So it's always been this like arm's length kind of relationship up until about age 35. And that's also when I met my now husband. And he really cares about money in a good way, not in a Scroogey way. And I just started educating myself about money and how to keep my money, how to invest it, which is exactly what we'll be talking about. And I was also by that time, like having my own business and working with a business coach. And I still remember like the first year in business, the first like 2 months in business, I didn't know how to pay myself. And so I didn't. And then like I had late credit card bills and I didn't have money in my bank account. And it was just this whole crazy thing. And so as time has gone on, I've gotten more in touch with it. I'm not going to say that I'm like 100%, like, oh, I love money. I feel so comfortable with it and all of that. But I think now that I have educated myself more about it, it's helped me have a healthier relationship with it and like have a more empowered relationship and viewpoint on it.
Tell me a little bit about the idea or the difference between making money and, like you mentioned, like paying off your bills, your credit card bills, or whatever it might be, paying off and looking at your paychecks and then paying off your accounts
Mhm.
versus building wealth. So that's a really big difference in the money mindset, I think. Can you
Mhm.
talk to us a little bit about that? That is something that you shared with me that I thought was very eye-opening and also I think would be helpful for other people to hear.
Mhm. Well, there's like this equation, and I think some of it comes from Profit First is a great book by Mike Michalowicz, and he has a great approach to just managing your money as an entrepreneur. And he says, take the profit out first. Like, don't just look at the money that came into your bank account and s- pay off your software bills, your whatever bills, and then whatever is left, it's like, okay, I guess it's there. Like have a plan for your money. And there's an app that I use called YNAB. It's called You Need a Budget. I don't really use it for budgeting, but it's this system called like the envelope system where every dollar has a job.
Mm.
And it's looking at your money instead of, like you said, like instead of this almost like drawing down balance, of instead being like, okay, I had this money come in. Where, what buckets of things is it going towards? And how big do I want those buckets to be? And because I think even like creating a budget, I first started trying to make a budget using the tool Mint, which I think is either purchased or, oh, gone by
Into
now.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. They just scooped that one up, just like all the other good software out there. And and I didn't really like it because it just didn't feel like very flexible to me. And YNAB's great. And just this idea of look at, you need to know how much money you're spending and what your expenses are. And even that was something that was not something I was aware of when I was early on in my like money journey. And even the budgeting thing, it was just kind of more of a reactive thing like, oh, okay, I guess I spent that much money and I don't know. And when you are looking at the fact that you can see how much money, well, the other piece of it is the financial independence aspect of it. And it's another book and another framework that people go by, where instead of just endlessly looking for money and endlessly kind of hoping for, I need to have enough money, but I don't really know what enough is. And it's this bottomless pit of need and scarcity and all of that. It's like, where do I want to be? What's my end goal? And then how do I fine tune the different parts of my life to get to that goal? So, financial independence meaning just what is that amount of money that you need in the bank that if you were to never generate another dollar again, if it was earning interest, you were paying taxes, inflation was happening, that you would be okay to live off of that money for the rest of your life because you would be taking out a certain percent. Um, and it would be replenishing basically because it's has enough to keep growing. And um all of that is talked about in some of the other books that we'll kind of keep explaining. One of them is just called Financial Independence, I think, Financial Freedom. And then there's another one called Quit Like a Millionaire, which is also great about figuring that out. So it's like you figure out like what is that number that I ultimately need, and then there's tools that can help you backtrack from there to be like, how much money do I actually need to be making every year? What what is my tax burden? What are my expenses? And then you can start saying, well, actually, I want my expenses to be less because I can make 100K and I'm paying 20, 40, whatever percent in taxes. And if my expenses were 40,000, then I'd be able to save 30 or 40,000. And in 10 years, if I have that invested and it's growing, that's going to make me X amount of money versus just kind of guessing or hoping
Yeah,
for
yeah,
enough money.
yeah.
Yeah.
I wanna get into how people can be building wealth, but before we get into that,
Yeah.
I wanna go back to building a budget.
Mhm.
And maybe you can talk to us a little bit about how you develop your budget. You mentioned the app that you use, but
Mhm.
how do you look at, like, the buckets of where you want to spend, assuming you're having some revenue come in? Like, what percent of your income do you want to be based on expenses? What percent should that go into marketing? What percent should go into labor? And I'll just say from my own
Yeah.
experience,
Yeah.
I look at my own KPIs every month, my key performance indicators, and see where I'm at. And in that, list out all of the monthly fees or the annual fees that I then divide by 12 for a lot of the software programs that I use. So, for example, I use Mailchimp, and it's a big chunk because I have a lot of subscribers. It's a big
Mm.
chunk, and then I also know that I will tack on a bunch of other software subscriptions that are like 19.99 a month or 14.99 a month. It doesn't seem like much, but a lot of these software apps can really add up. So,
Yeah.
back to my original question, how do you go about developing your actual budget?
Well, I will admit that I do not create a budget anymore. I used to. I used Profit First and used some spreadsheets too because he has some really great examples of like what percent of your revenue should be going towards expenses and all of that. Some of it is just looking at the numbers and saying, and you can do the percentages. I think it's important to do the percentages and benchmark it against like his benchmarks just to get a rough idea and make sure that your salary is it's a labor cost. Like it is one of the things. And I just pay myself what I want to be paid. Um and and obviously make sure that there's enough money and all of that. But then I look at, okay, we did the benchmarks, and so I kind of have seen how much I'm spending, and then I will look at year to year, what was last quarter? Is there anything coming up that's like an annual subscription that I have? Am I preparing for that? How does my profit look compared to last year? How does this number look? Is this what I was expecting, or like what's changing? And do I really feel like this expense warrants itself still? Is it going to be generating sales, or is this an expense that I actually need to be worrying about? And my perspective lately, I mean, so I'm in a coaching program and I'm getting a lot of coaching around a lot of different things in my business. Before we hit record, I said I'm doing a lot of deep thinking in my business. And some of the things that I've been doing this past year and a little bit of end of last year is investing like fairly heavily in my business and hoping to scale and grow past where I am right now, which is requiring some spending that doesn't feel super comfortable. But I think if I were to spend forever, which I have done, poring over my books and doing all sorts of calculations to calculate, is this going to generate the thing and what percentage of this and all of this. I think because I have dug into my numbers for many years, I just feel like I can kind of like I need to look at it, but don't need to necessarily like scrutinize every investment, because some of it you just have to do it, you know?
Yeah. Well, one thing I think I'm gonna go back to one sentence that you said was that you pay yourself. You give yourself a salary. That's a labor expense, and you're not talking about a labor of your assistant or some of
Right.
the technology people that help you. That you are an expense within your own business. I think that's important for entrepreneurs to hear. I think oftentimes we're just thinking about making the money, paying the expenses, and then not realizing that you are to be paying yourself as well. So that
Yeah.
is a really important element to running your own business as an entrepreneur, working in that field of,
Mhm.
of dietetics. The other thing I think that was important that you said was that it's okay to spend money. So maybe talk a little bit about like mistakes you have experienced yourself with money or mistakes that you've heard other people making with their money. I have plenty of mistakes I've made with my own money, and that is I'm just a very simple thing is sort of staying on the ball, working with my accountant to make sure that I'm paying all of just the general tax expenses that come up. Just for example, I have an LLC that is not in Delaware, it is in California. And so I have to
Mm.
pay $800 a year, but it's only once a year that comes up,
Oh, that's
and
not bad.
making right? Like,
Yeah.
I've missed it. I've missed it once,
Oh, yeah.
and, but they are actually very nice to talk to and work with. They were super
Oh, good.
easy. I don't know if there's somebody on the end of that line today, but that you're calling them
Right.
up, but in general,
Yeah.
a lot of mistakes can be made along the way as being an entrepreneur. What are some good stories that you've got, either from yourself or others?
Um, yeah, there's a few. One was like we had been doing custom websites for a couple years, and I was charging a price that I thought was all the market could bear, and then I started calculating my profit margin on those projects, and realized that I was losing money on some of those projects because of I mean, like, it almost makes me wanna cry. I really felt at the bottom of I just felt like I was a terrible business owner, that I was just how could I have made that mistake? I was so ashamed. It was
Mhm.
just yeah, it was really rough. I remember very vividly, like, where I was, what time of year it was, and then I made changes, and it's something that I do now when I can to calculate the profit margin. It does help me make decisions about how much more I want to invest in team or marketing or ads. Um, but then sometimes I overanalyze though to that. Like right now, like I said, I'm wanting to scale. So just because it's maybe eating into profits a little bit more, it doesn't mean that I shouldn't do it. There is a time and a place, but to just be yeah, having projects that don't make any money, then that's like not good either. So that was a tough one. And mistakes that other people have made on the personal side that I mean, sometimes I guess I've made this maybe a little bit is on the savings and investing side. And the fact that everyone gives you advice to save, but what they really mean is save and invest. They're
Mhm.
not just saying put money in a savings account. And you may think that your money is safe in a savings account and that is the safest place for it to be. The problem is that inflation is basically eating your money without you really realizing it. So every year, the value of the dollar is going down. And so you may still have $100 in your bank account, but its buying power is now only $90 or $80. That's why a loaf of bread was like 50 cents, in our grandparents, and now it's, $2 something, I don't know. So to just have your money sitting, like sitting, under your mattress and it's not growing in value at all. Even those cost of living raises that we get from our companies, and we're so happy to get a 3 or 4%, cost of living raise, like it's kind of bull because like inflation is going higher than that right now. Like that's not a raise. Like that is just, so you need to actually be investing your money, even if it's in safer investments like bonds or mutual funds. There are books that we'll talk about either next or at the end about getting more familiar with investing. It does not have to be this bro investing, day trader, crypto kind of thing at all. I think that it's very intimidating to a lot of us because it feels like we're going to get taken advantage of. It's going to be hard. We're going to lose all of our money. And, but you need to be educated about it. And it's just like so many things in life where once you get educated, you realize, okay, it's just another thing that I'm learning. It's not like there's some crazy smoke and mirrors that you're never going to be able to figure out because you didn't go to school for it or you're not a CPA, you know?
Oh, well, I was gonna say, right, I think you mentioned something really important and wanna bring it back up again. You mentioned the word shame. I think a lot of us are experts, and we're scientists in the field of nutrition, and we are not financial experts, and that's totally fine. But, back to the word of shame, there is a lot of people do feel a lot of shame around money, either that they're afraid that they're not making enough money, or that they're not saving enough money, or whatever it might be, or just don't have a handle on their own finances. And shame
Yeah.
comes into that. And I will speak for myself. I live in San Francisco. A lot of my friends are MBAs and work in high finance. They are finance bros. Like these people that I surround in finance, I don't know what the equivalent is for a woman, but a lot of
Yeah.
my friends are attorneys and they are working for big fancy companies with their big fancy jobs, and they look at spreadsheets all the time and they say P&L all the time for a profit and loss statement. It's like that's not
Right.
my vocabulary,
Yeah.
but I don't have to feel shame because it's just math. And as dietitians, health professionals, we're all actually very good at math. It is just math. And I think just to put that in perspective, they might be able to rattle off a few things and EBITDA and like be able to say like these
Yeah.
fancy
Market cap.
market cap, like say all these fancy terms. That doesn't matter. All we care about is what's, X plus Y equals Z with a percentage on there. It doesn't matter. And back to what you said also about a savings account, like thinking, I'm too afraid of investing my money and I just want to do something safe in my own Wells Fargo account. I'm just going to
Mm.
move some money over to a savings account. But back to what you said is the cost of living is around, it will vary, but it will, let's say it's 3% increase every year. The money in your savings account, again, it's just math, is usually under 3% that it's going to
Yeah.
be
The
earning.
interest
So,
is
let's say
not good.
2%. So that's
Yeah.
a negative 1% gain. That's not a gain, right? And so you're
Yeah.
looking for something that's a little bit higher, a higher percentage, a 7% increase, an 8% increase, or if you invest in real estate in San Francisco, it could be a 16% increase. Like it can really
Mhm.
vary. And I
Yeah.
think that's the beauty of building wealth. So anything greater than 3% is going to
Yeah.
be what we're looking for. And so this is where again, just to reiterate, we're having a conversation that's not intended as advice,
Yeah.
but to then check in with a financial advisor. I recently had a conversation with our own financial advisor. This person recommended all these fantastic ways that we can be putting our money pre-tax, post-tax, depending on where you're at with your income tax bracket, like put it into a Roth or a Roth 401k, a regular
Mhm.
401k,
Mhm.
post-tax. You can put money in to a SEP IRA if you
Mhm.
are an entrepreneur
Self-employed.
earning
Mhm.
your own money, self-employed. You can also put your money in a healthcare savings account. So
Mhm.
there are all lots of different options that we can take advantage of that will be earning more than that 2% sitting in a savings account. So I think that's really helpful. You've got a ton of resources, and we'll put those into our each of our show
Yeah.
notes so that you have these resources available where it is professional information. But
Yeah.
then also do check in with your personal accountant, your tax accountant, or your financial advisor. Anyone
Yeah.
who is a professional in this area can look at you, your income, your tax bracket, your age, and tell you what's the best thing for you. And then speaking of age, I'm going to go back to the mistakes question. I think everybody is making a mistake if they don't take a tiny bit of money, and I'm talking like $50 a month, up to $200 a month and putting it away in one of these retirement accounts or one of these savings accounts that's not earning just 2%.
Mhm.
Because when you start investing early, even small amounts of money, it compounds. You all remember that from like 8th grade, right?
Yeah, but I never, never understood it or knew it, and my mom was, pounding in my head, and I was like, "No, whatever." Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So if you're working for a company, max out on your 401k, and if your company matches it, that is even better, right? And if
Yes.
they're you're taking out 5% and they're adding another 5%, that's 10% of your pre-tax money or post-tax, depending on what kind of account you have, that's going right into an account that you're never going to see until you actually need it. And it's just a gift that you give your future self so that you don't have
Yeah.
to work until you're 80, right?
Yeah.
That's not the idea, is
No.
not to work, your entire life. You can if you want
No.
to, but you can make those decisions. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's taking the extra money, which is what I didn't really ever realize, is that the job for the money that you get, from your job or from your business is to also for further fund your retirement. You don't need I have a 401k account from my prior company. It got, converted into another kind of IRA. But I also have an investment account that I am putting additional money that I don't spend from my paycheck every month. And that is my savings and investing account. And then I can take that money out if there's some opportunity that I want to, take advantage of, whether it's buying a house or doing, because if you're putting all of your money into these 401k government accounts, you're going to have penalties taking that money out. So you don't want to put all of your money in there, but then you do want to keep saving and investing. And I think that was a point of confusion for me early on, was I just thought saving for retirement was just into those accounts. But there's really three different buckets, that your money can be going in when it comes from, after the taxes come out, we could talk about taxes too, but you got your expenses, but really pay attention to what your expenses are and don't spend more than you need. And then, yes, there's maybe some IRA government, savings accounts, and you really need to figure out which one is right for you and your financial situation. And then you should still be creating your own account that is your investment account that you are taking those savings. You may still want to have some actual savings in an account that you can access, because say your water heater breaks and you need 5 grand. I don't know how much a water heater, maybe it's not that much. But if you need that, you don't want to have to sell stocks in order to, unless, yeah, anyway. So you don't want to have to necessarily change a lot, move a lot of investments around. So it's fine to have a slush fund of money for those emergencies. But then beyond that, you then need to be taking that money and putting it into investments so that it's growing and not just getting eaten away. Um, yeah. And I think really traveling has forced me to be a minimalist. And I delight in not spending money. I love not spending money. And I think it can be really tough whenever I go back to the US. I have consumer guilt that I don't have new clothes or, don't have this thing that I'm seeing advertised. And so it's hard for, I think, especially in places where there's a lot of consumerism and commercial activity. But your money that you're getting from your paycheck doesn't have to just be for your expenses. It can be going to fund your retirement. It can be moving your retirement age closer and closer to get to, if you want to retire at 45, make a plan to figure it out. And you can put your money towards that versus, I used to get a new purse every season. I was like, "Oh, I need a new purse for fall." It's like, "No. No, you do not."
You're speaking to me. I think I do. I think I do need a new purse every season. But anyway, all right. But taxes. We talked about taxes a little bit, and that's
Yeah.
for professionals. They can help all of us figure that out legally. I was super curious. I think this is how this conversation came up in the first place. I was super curious about Whitney, what are you doing about your taxes living abroad? And what does that mean? What is how does that change for you? How do you think about money living in different countries? How does that work for
Mhm.
you? And if someone's interested in being a digital nomad or just living in a different country
Yeah,
for
being an
half
expat
the
or
year,
anything.
right?
Mhm.
Tell us about what your taxes, how that works out.
Yeah. So taxes are another thing that I think, I mean, we don't need to read the tax code, but to be familiar with how taxes work and how much we pay in taxes too. I had my business incorporated in DC when I was living there. And I remember going to an accountant and I told him that, and he was like, well, that was a mistake. And I didn't understand, but then it turned out that the tax rate was pretty high on businesses in DC. And you can decide to incorporate your business in a tax free state and do those kinds of things. And each state has different taxes. And so, um, now that I no longer spend much time in the United States, I am still a tax resident there. It's my only tax home. And US citizens are in a unique and unfortunate category that we will always pay taxes no matter where we are. You are never outside of the watchful eye of the IRS. Um, but there are some advantages we take advantage of something within the United States called the Foreign Earned Income Exclusion, the FEIE, which you would want to talk to your accountant about. And we definitely have, we don't work with any financial advisors, but we do work with an accountant. And we make sure that it's an accountant who understands the expat life abroad lifestyle, because there are a lot of tax um, benefits of living abroad and taking advantage of those. So that helps us on our income taxes and not having to pay as much in income taxes since we're not in the United States. We still have to pay for like Social Security and Medicare, but don't have to have as much of a heavy burden as living in the States. So if you are someone who wants to, and you do have to qualify for that by being in foreign countries for the majority of the year, like the vast majority of the year. So we only go back to the States about 3 to 4 weeks every year. If we did any more than that, we would no longer qualify for this benefit. So
Hmm.
it does take some sacrifices. I can only see my family once a year, and but the cost savings are significant. So that's one thing that we take advantage of, and we've met people in our travels who are not familiar with that, and they're not back in the US, but they're not taking advantage of that. So
Hmm.
if you're only leaving the US for, I'm going to go for 4 months, then I'm going to come back, like then it's not going to apply to you. But if you are planning to kind of just leave and you're not sure where you're going, but you're not going to be there, then I would definitely talk to an accountant who is familiar with that kind of stuff. So that's, I think, like the biggest thing. And then also, if you're kind of moving out a little bit, then see if you can move your tax residence to a state that doesn't have income tax as well, and try and help yourself out there if you can, again, with your accountant's support and advice. And then otherwise, something to really be aware of as you travel to other countries is that generally most countries, and every country is different. So this also requires just researching. Everything can be found on the internet. You could start with just asking ChatGPT, and then you need to go and validate that ChatGPT is not lying to you or using something from 2020. Um, but generally speaking, you become a tax resident in a country when you're there for 6 months. So that's something that we're always careful of. Not that we think that the tax collector is suddenly going to go finding us around the world, um, because a lot of times there's nothing in their systems that they would even know that, we were there and how much money we have and all of that. Um, but we don't like risking it because
I
the
was going to say
implications.
follow the
Yeah,
law, right? Yeah.
yeah, because some of these countries, they have huge tax rates, and some of them have worldwide income taxes, some of them wealth taxes as well, which means that they would take a percentage of all of our money, not just the income that we made that one year, which is what most, in the US, that's what you're just paying taxes on the income that you made. Because frankly, the money that's in your wealth, you already paid taxes on it, or it's in a tax deferred account. But no, these countries would just take 2%, just take 1% off of all of it. Um, so our travel methodology anyway is to just generally be in places like 3 months, because that's what tourist visas generally allow. We like to keep the paperwork low so we don't have to really do a whole lot of paperwork to just stay in a country for 3 months. And then that means that we don't have to worry about being a tax resident and can just keep going. And then we also really just leverage lower cost of living in a lot of places. Our highest expense is our housing. We do go through Airbnb, which gets pricey, but then and we spend on things that we want to spend on, but yeah, we don't have a lot of luggage, so we're not spending on clothes. We're in Brazil right now, cooking a lot from home. I'm looking at our YNAB and I'm like, yeah, we're spending so little money. Like, this is so good. But we had spent the summer in Europe and had spent quite a bit of money
Exactly.
there. So we're really just recovering from that time. Um, but yeah, so I think taxes is another thing to just learn about and be aware of, because talking about that money that's coming in from your check, whether it's you paying yourself or from your company, look at how much is coming out in taxes. It's possible that you can do something about it. And I think that there's one book, I think it was Rich Dad Poor Dad,
Mm.
that talked about that it is your right to not pay more than you're needed to in taxes. I've been of the feeling of like, well, I just need to pay whatever taxes they want to take out. I just need to, because again, don't want to get in trouble. You need, you are entitled to minimize your taxes. You are entitled to minimize your tax burden legally, all of that. We're not breaking any laws, but you are entitled to that. And that is another way for you to save money. It's not a non negotiable, oh, I just have to grin and bear it. Other things that we save money on, it's like we don't have health insurance. The medical costs outside the US are vastly different than the US. And so I just think looking at those things that are eating at your money, and instead of taking them as a given, start questioning, is there something I could be doing about this? Because sometimes there is.
That brings me to another question. I'm always curious about people's daily habits, their
Mm,
routines, their day in the life of their money life, and I'm curious to know, like, maybe a couple habits that you have or routines that you have, and I'll share one of mine. And this goes back to the money shame idea: is get comfortable with talking about money, looking at your money. One of the things I do is when I start off my day, I'll just go right to my business account and I'll look to see what's going out and what's coming in. Did that invoice I sent out did it get paid yet, or did that expense come in? What is that expense, right? Like, just staying top of mind
yeah.
and therefore not feeling shameful about it. Just, it's like constantly having a conversation with my bank,
It's like
right?
exposure therapy, I feel
It
like.
kind of, yes, totally, right. Yeah,
It's like,
just like
look at the
looking at
spider,
it.
look
Just,
at the
it's
spider.
okay. Yeah, yeah. What's a habit that you have, Whitney?
Very similar, I think, to what you're saying. I do have a little widget on my phone. It's not on my home screen, but it's on one of the screens that just shows my business bank balance. Sometimes I don't love it, but it's there and it's just getting me to like ground into my money a little bit. And then I sometimes get behind, but every month I do my books in my business where I do my QuickBooks, get all the expenses in there, get them all categorized, and then I generally just look at my P&L at this point and just see, okay, what money came in, what money went out. That is my opportunity too to see if there's any overdue invoices or, any expense that I'm like, I thought I canceled that. And yeah, not waiting to do it, for like 3 months down the line, cuz usually if you catch something within a month and it was an error, a lot of times you can get it fixed or figure it out, or god forbid you have like a fee on a credit card that you realize like, oh, that payment didn't go through or whatever. I Back when I said I didn't know how to pay myself and then I got all these late fees and got dinged on my credit card, I had a friend and she was like, you should call them and ask for like all of that to be reversed. And because, you have a credit history with them. And I felt so shameful
Mhm.
about it that I didn't, but now me would definitely call and try and get those fees reversed and just, avoid them. And I had a month in my business where money was a little tight and I let my bank balance or my credit card balance like just rotate once through. And then I realized, "Oh, no, like, they're gonna charge you, like, a pretty big fee on that." And it was and yeah, and it was so dumb. I coulda just moved money back from my own personal to cover it, and that's what I did instead because I'm not gonna give $250 to Chase, like, "No, thank
Right.
you," you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So monthly, I think looking at those things and, I do have forecasting software that I've used off and on. I don't use it as much anymore, and it's a little complicated, but, um, sometimes I'll go in there and look to see, like, how is this tracking against the forecast, and but I used to use just spreadsheets, which I think are also good, just to figure out your cash flow and what money are you hoping to accumulate, what's how do you think the year is going to end, especially at this time of year too, where things are wrapping up. How much money do you think you're going to make in the business at the end of the year? Are there any ways that you can, do you have some expenses that you've been kind of waiting to make that maybe you can do that so that you can minimize how much top line like income you really have showing to the government so you can minimize your taxes. I mean, you never want to spend money on stuff you don't need, but you know, figuring out and like I'm classified as a C S corp. Even yeah, I think it's S corp. And so I draw a paycheck so that I get taxed income tax on the paycheck, but then the money that does not flow through my paycheck is treated as capital gains, is the profit in the business, and that's taxed at a lower tax rate and doesn't have, yeah, it just has a lower tax rate. And so that's another thing where you can be talking to your accountant around this time of year too, to be like, what, or should I be contributing to some kind of IRA to reduce my final taxable income as well? Like that's you can still be doing some of that in January, but like it's good to be doing it at that point. And then like personally, yeah, I try to do this monthly too. And YNAB is to also do the same thing where I'm reviewing all of our expenses, I'm categorizing them, and then looking to see how we're doing um, compared to last month. Like, where are we spending money? And it just allows me to flag things. And I'm like, what was that? Like, was we, so we like got double charged at a restaurant once. And I was like really delayed in looking at it, but luckily I was able to contest all of it and, so it's like, don't pay extra money that
Yeah.
you don't need.
Yeah, look at your money, feel comfortable talking about the money. And I was just going to wrap up with one final question about advice do you have or any additional resources? You've mentioned quite a few fantastic resources,
Yeah.
including the app and the books. We'll list all of those in the show notes. I was going to say one bit of advice I have is that any time outside of March and April is a really great time to talk to your accountant about what to do. And tax laws, charitable contribution laws change every year. There are some changes coming in 2026. So this is being recorded in October of 2025. This is a great time to chat with your accountant or your financial planner who maybe manages some of your money to
Mhm.
ask them like what's coming up in 2026 or whatever's coming up in the next year. What do I need to do? What can I take advantage of now? Or maybe do I wait? So this is a great time to sort of be thinking about that. If you've got kids and you're thinking that they should be going to college at some point, or you're going to spend some sort of money on their education, that maybe talk to your accountant about starting a charity or a tax fund for the, or not a tax fund, but a
College
savings,
fund.
educational
Yeah.
savings account for them, 529, or I forget what they're called. Yeah. So there's different ones that you can do, but talk to those people. And this time of year is a fantastic time to do it. So wrapping up, Whitney, any other
Yeah.
pieces of advice or anything else you want to share with us?
I mean, all of that was wonderful advice, and I will agree with that. And then I would just reiterate kind of the point that we've been making to become empowered about your money and going beyond just what you're earning, but what you can be saving in terms of taxes or just in general from the expenses that you create and how you're making your money grow. And I always say I like to know enough to be dangerous. And a for me, reading books is a very, low, like, judgment zone because I can take as long as I can reread that section 20 times. I still cannot tell you the difference between traditional and a Roth IRA. I have to, like, look it up every single time. And so I can reread those. No one is rushing me or making me feel bad that I don't understand it yet. And so find whatever it is for you. If there's podcasts or creators that you like, learn from them. And then when you are talking to, because what happens is that sometimes when you're opening these bank accounts or you have these different investment accounts, there are people at those banks that are going to want to talk to you a whole lot about your money and give you advice. And it's been sometimes hard for me to just basically tell them like, no, I feel confident in what I'm doing, and I don't need you to tell me what to do. I feel good about this, but it's because my husband has been supportive of me. Like, he helped me like buy my first, stock. It was just an index fund. But it getting that confidence and then reading the books and really feeling comfortable enough. One thing that I am not into, I realized, read a book about like value investing. Like Warren Buffett is a value investor. He watches and waits on specific stocks, and he invests in them when he feels like it's the right value. And I thought maybe I could be like that. And then I realized the amount of work that goes into it. So the
Yeah.
book was Invested, and Danielle Town, she did a wonderful job explaining what actually is required to be a value investor. And it was great because it wasn't like, oh, you can do it and it's great. It was like, this is what's required. And I was able to make that choice that nope, I don't want to have a daily investing practice. I don't want to read the news about a whole segment, and decide and calculate, when is the right time, the right price to buy this specific company. And so there's books about index funds, which is just all that I invest in now. My husband spends more time learning about specific things, and he will invest in specific companies because he is actually watching the news and paying attention to things. I don't like doing that. And so you don't have to have like a complicated approach to investing. You don't need to have like really advanced experience. If you do want to work with an advisor, just follow the advice in these books about the kinds of advisors to work with. And this is another one of those ones where I'm not even going to say the different terms because I get them confused. But there's some advisors that will take a cut, and there's other ones that will just get paid in some other way. And it's just best to also know who you're working with, but still be educated and not just abdicate all responsibility to someone else. It's still your money. Yes, they are an expert, but it's still within you to also be aware and empowered around it. And just getting educated, even a small way. I mean, I've read these books. I started reading them in like 2020. So it's been many years that I've been reading these books. They're slow reads, but just slowly work at it, figure out how much you want to know. And really anything's possible when you get yourself educated and get more comfortable. So that was a really long
That was a good
best
one.
advice, but
And by the way, since we've been out of the country, here in the US, there are TV commercials right now that do tell you the difference between a financial advisor that takes your money and doesn't. So we're all sort of
oh,
laughing in the
good.
back. So yeah,
Okay, good.
helping us
Very
be
good.
educated through commercials. Anyway,
Yeah,
Whitney, thank you. Oh my gosh, your insights were just invaluable. But I think also just having a conversation and just bringing this to the surface. It's all about salary. We always talk about salary transparency, but I think just talking about money in general is really helpful to all of us listening and not being the person who is afraid of talking about math. Essentially, you're not afraid
it
about
is.
talking about math,
Yeah.
and neither are our listeners. We're good
Mhm.
at math, and that's all that money is, and it just has different rules and terms, and we're certainly adept at becoming good at that, or even just
Yes.
average at that, and that's all you need to be, is just
Right.
average.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Yep. So
So
true.
thank you so much for your expertise. I will say that all of the information we talked about in this session is all going to be in the show notes down below. And I wish everybody much success in their businesses, whether you're working for a company or you are your own company.
Mhm.
That know that the money that you're making is so powerful. It can be a really, really powerful, positive part of your life. And so thank you, Whitney. It was really
Thank
great chatting
you.
about money.
Yes. Thank you for suggesting this, Stacey, and being such a wonderful interviewer. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, everyone. Bye for now.
Bye.